It's a story with the headline so shocking and sad, you have to read it twice to believe what police are alleging. This 7-year-old boy is dead. He allegedly weighed 255 pounds. Now his parents are charged with murder after the boy was found unresponsive in their home.
For a 7-year-old male, 7, not breathing, sounds like they're getting CPR started.
I have the newly released police report that details what allegedly happened on the day that young boy was found living in conditions that police say were so horrific they, quote, cannot be accurately described.
Imagine calling 911 because your 7-year-old son isn't breathing, and when police walk through your front door, they can't even tell if there's carpet or wood underneath the trash. That's not a horror movie. That's what happened in Flint Township, Michigan, last November. And now, months later, the boy's own parents are behind bars, charged with murder. His name was Casper O'Brien. He was 7 years old, and according to the county medical examiner, he weighed 255 pounds when he died. Let that sink in for a second. The average 7-year-old boy weighs somewhere around 50 pounds. Casper weighed 5 times that. For context, 255 pounds is close to what an NFL lineman carries on a 6-foot frame.
Let's face it, that is a weight that's considered heavy by adult standards. But a 7-year-old, you just continue to ask yourself, how is that even possible? The average weight, by the way, for a 7-year-old boy, it should be between 50 and 55 pounds. 7-year-old Casper O'Brien, though, should be known for so much more than just the way that he died and his weight at the time that he died, which has made this such a national story. There's no question that 7-year-old Casper faced a lot of challenges in his life from the moment he was born. He was diagnosed with autism, his family says, and they also say that he was nonverbal. But his obituary, and this is important, it says that Casper was a bright, loving young boy whose joyful spirit touched everyone around him. An important thing.
Casper stood just over 4 feet tall. So how does something like this happen? That's the question prosecutors, investigators, and honestly the entire country have been asking since this story broke. Let's start from the beginning. On the morning of November 4th, 2025, Flint Township police got a call, a child in distress, not breathing. When officers arrived, Casper's mother, Jessica O'Brien, told them she'd checked on him around 8:30 that morning and he was fine. But 15 minutes later, he wasn't breathing. Paramedics rushed him to Hurley Medical Center.
Downtown.
Police were called on that day in November in the morning to a house in Genesee Township, Michigan, specifically Flint Township. And as you read through this police document, you find that officers really had a hard time finding the words to accurately describe what they reportedly saw inside. So we found the call from November 4th in Genesee County that sent officers to the home of the O'Briens. Now, inside the house, Casper was not breathing. Police write that they get to the home just before 9 in the morning, and Jessica O'Brien said that Casper had been breathing that morning around 8:30, but then 15 minutes later, she went to check on him, and he was no longer breathing, so she called 911. One of the first officers who entered the home writes, quote, I observed extreme hoarding conditions. There was trash on the floor throughout the residence. It was so extreme, I could not tell if there was carpet or...
He was pronounced dead before noon. What police say they found inside that home is where this case takes a much darker turn. According to court records, officers described the house as being in a state of extreme hoarding.
Or wood floors. Police, and I noticed this as you read through, it's a 16-page police report. And each narrative from the, I think about 5 officers who write what they encountered that day, they really had a hard time finding the words to describe what they experienced when they went into this house. There's one officer who writes, quote, the residence was absolutely disgusting and can't be accurately described in words. Another officer said, upon entering through the front door, I observed the living room completely covered in trash, including numerous stacked garbage bags. Then in the summary of one statement by an officer, they write, quote, the residence was overwhelmingly cluttered and unsanitary with large amounts of trash and poop throughout, which emitted an overbearing and foul odor. Furthermore, there were abundant insects throughout the entirety of the residence. This home was a mess.
Trash covering the floors, insects throughout the home, and conditions serious enough that first responders reportedly had trouble simply moving through the space. Genesee County Prosecutor David Layton later told reporters the scene was one of the worst he'd encountered in over 2 decades on the job. Casper wasn't the only child in that house. His 5-year-old sister was also there.
Now, police end up speaking to both Jessica and Damien O'Brien separately, and based on what's been alleged, you hear a lot of excuses for the state of the home and the health of their son. They have a 5-year-old daughter also, by the way, who was found inside the house, and police allege that her fingernails were dirty and her hair was knotted and tangled, and she also had a bad cough, which police were concerned about her health. And when you think of everything that was potentially in the air with the descriptions we're getting from inside the house, that is a major concern. The story that the O'Briens give about Casper's day-to-day is nothing short of heartbreaking. Jessica told investigators that Casper was mobile, but she also said he spent 12 hours a day in his bed. So let's face it, he was bedridden for most of the day. His mother told police that Casper's diet consisted of a daily large bag of potato chips, a large French fry, carbonated sugar water that's called ice, and apple juice. Jessica O'Brien also said that all Casper wanted to do was eat because of an undiagnosed eating disorder. Now remember, Casper's only 7 years old, and he's
removed by Child Protective Services the same day and placed into foster care. Now here's where the medical piece comes in, because this is central to why prosecutors aren't calling this simple neglect. They're calling it murder. The medical examiner ruled Casper's cause of death as dilated cardiomyopathy.
And that is putting it lightly. And inside, as they work their way through the trash, police say, they encounter Casper O'Brien, this young boy who was unresponsive. They were allegedly doing CPR on him, Casper's family members, specifically his uncle. But police end up rushing Casper to the hospital, and he is pronounced dead before noon on that day. And according to the local medical examiner, Casper's cause of death was dilated cardiomyopathy. So I looked that up. I'm obviously not a doctor, but the National Institutes of Health says that it is heart disease and it's associated with people who struggle with obesity. And to my understanding, your heart enlarges and it's almost stretched too thin to be able to pump blood effectively. Casper's heart, it was just too weak to continue working.
A condition where the heart's chambers become enlarged and too weak to pump blood effectively. It's a condition strongly linked to severe, long-term obesity. Doctors classify severe obesity using something called BMI, body mass index. For a healthy 7-year-old, that number should sit around 16. Casper's was reportedly over 70. That's not a number that appears overnight, and that's exactly the argument prosecutors are expected to make. According to court documents, Casper hadn't seen a doctor in nearly 2 years before he died. His last documented visit was in early 2024 when he weighed about 104 pounds, still large for his age, but nowhere near 255. At that appointment, his mother was reportedly given guidance on diet and exercise, and Casper was referred to a pediatric endocrinologist.
7 years old, and he's nonverbal. Now, police say he had not seen a doctor in 2 years, and they allege that Jessica never really made an effort to take Casper to a doctor, but they also say, and this is important when you think of how the criminal case could play out, they allege that she could have. And we'll talk a little bit more about how that factors into all of this in a moment. Now, Casper reportedly didn't bathe for approximately 6 months. His dad said he would allegedly clean him with wipes roughly 3 times a week, and he said that Casper didn't like water, but they did have a working shower. So there's another example of something that could have been done, and the resources were there to do it, but they didn't, according to police. What police say they found when they examined Casper's body at the hospital is really disturbing, so I'm going to give you a warning of that before we get into it.
Court records indicate he never went. So what changed in those 2 years? Prosecutors say
something about, well, his diet consisted of carbonated or sparkling soda and potato chips. It's not possible.
Right.
It's the amount of calories you have to pump into a body. And then you get to a certain weight where you need X amount of calories to maintain that weight. I don't know what was going on in that house, but good Lord.
You actually bring up a really good point, because in the police report, I think what they allege is like a large bag of potato chips, a large fry, and then this like ice water, but it's like sugary carbonated soda pretty much. And it's like that just still doesn't add up to hit that particular weight. Like it just seems like there has to be more there.
You would have to have a constant drip of carbonated sugar soda, almost like an IV, to put that many calories in your body to gain that kind of weight. It's got to be forced. It's almost like force feeding. I can't imagine anything else.
Casper's day-to-day diet consisted largely of chips, fries, and sugary soda. He was reportedly nonverbal, autistic, and spent much of each day in bed. He wasn't enrolled in school, which meant no teachers, no school nurse, no mandated reporters who might have noticed something was wrong. For 2 years, by prosecutors' account, almost no outside adults saw this child. And this is the part of the case that's drawn so much attention, according to authorities. This wasn't a family without resources. Court filings indicate
Casper's alleged conditions These do not happen overnight. I want to show you this picture here. This is on Jessica O'Brien's Facebook page that we found, and it's a picture from 2022. It's unclear how things got so bad in this house, allegedly, as you just take a look at Casper there. Obviously a big kid, but again, at the time he passed away, we were talking about 255 pounds, according to police. Now, as far as Damien O'Brien, the dad, is concerned, he told police that his son, he thought, weighed 170 pounds, which, look, that would still be huge for a 7-year-old. But again, 255 is the number that police say he weighed at the time that he died. There's one other thing that I really noticed in the narrative that's been laid out by police, and it's that Jessica O'Brien told them that one of the family dogs had a stroke the night before Casper died, and she got up that morning to make a vet appointment. Think about that. Her dog allegedly has a health issue. So the first thing she does, call the doctor for that dog. And yet her son hadn't seen a doctor in roughly 2 years. Police say she didn't even know who Casper's pediatrician was. This was a boy who had serious medical issues. Jessica and her husband, though, apparently they went to the doctor plenty. Court records state that Jessica said that she and Damien would go to the doctor regularly, and her most recent appointment was the month before her son died. On top of that, she says that Damien's job, which was working in IT, it came with good health benefits with a copay of just $20. Now, when asked why she did not take her nonverbal autistic son to a doctor, police say inconvenience was the reason. She didn't like the fact that she would have to go and wait in a waiting room for a long time, then see a doctor, and then after 5 minutes, the doctor would say her son was okay. She also told police that she had a distrust of doctors because she claims she was sexually assaulted by a doctor. Now, look, I am not one to deny whether anything like that ever happened. And it is certainly unclear if that is the truth. But even if it is the truth, remember, she saw a doctor just the month before her son died. Casper died in November.
For themselves seeing doctors regularly during this same period. That detail matters a lot in a case like this because it goes directly to intent, the difference legally between neglect and murder. Prosecutor Layton put it bluntly.
Here's what comes to mind to me: wanton and willful. The behavior on those parents is wanton and willful. You don't put a kid in school. They said he was nonverbal and autistic, never had him diagnosed. The other child is also morbidly obese and wandering around unclothed. This is intentional behavior by these parents, and you have to talk about the intentional part of the behavior. Torture was on one of the charges. Now, torture, what could that be? Could that be force feeding this kid? I think it could be, but you have to show that it is wanton and willful. And because there is another charge in Illinois, there's a charge of child neglect resulting in death, but it's not murder. And if you go forward with the murder charge, you take into consideration the ME saying these are some of the worst bed sores I've ever seen. And they've seen a lot of them, especially when you deal with like elderly in nursing homes that don't get moved and things like that. So I think the prosecutor has a strong case, and I think law enforcement put together a good case to say it wasn't just neglect. It wasn't just not paying attention. It was willfully keeping the kid from a doctor, willfully, not providing the kid a atmosphere or an environment where he could thrive or even get better. So I think that charge is appropriate. And again, this is what you have to prove.